The metal bench felt cold against Jack Thompson's back as he assembled his rifle for the fourth time that morning. The other aliens in the training facility's prep room kept throwing him odd looks, their expressions a mixture of amusement and pity. He ignored them, focusing instead on the familiar click of each part sliding perfectly into place. A tall Brightclaw warrior stopped in front of him, its silvery scales reflecting the harsh artificial lighting. "Human Thompson, you still insist on bringing that primitive weapon to the qualification trials." The alien's universal translator made its voice sound like grinding metal. Jack didn't look up from his work. "Yes, Commander Brightsong, I do." The Brightclaw commander made a chirping sound that passed for laughter among his kind. Several other aliens in the room joined in, their various forms of amusement creating an odd symphony of clicks, whistles, and grinding noises. "Your species joined the Galactic Defense Alliance barely 6 months ago," Brightsong said. "You have much to learn about modern warfare. Here, take this." The commander held out a sleek plasma rifle, its surface gleaming with pulsing blue energy lines, a proper weapon for a soldier of the Alliance. Jack finally looked up, his weathered face expressionless. 20 years as Earth's most decorated sniper had taught him patience. "Thank you, Commander, but I'll stick with what I know works." More alien laughter filled the room. A gelatinous being in the corner rippled with mirth, its transparent body displaying patterns of amusement. A insectoid warrior clicked its mandibles in what Jack had learned was their equivalent of a dismissive snort. The year was 2157, and humanity had finally achieved its dream of joining the galactic community. The Galactic Defense Alliance had welcomed Earth with open arms, or tentacles, or appendages, depending on the species. But that welcome came with a heavy dose of condescension, especially when it came to military matters. Jack stood up, his rifle now fully assembled. The weapon looked almost primitive compared to the energy-based guns carried by the other warriors, but he knew every millimeter of it. The stock was reinforced carbon fiber, the barrel a custom-made alloy that could handle the extreme temperatures of space. It was anything but primitive. The facility's intercom crackled to life. "All qualification candidates report to Training Zone 7. Jack walked toward the exit, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes on his back. The training zone was a massive enclosed space designed to simulate various combat scenarios. Today's qualification test would determine which warriors would be selected for the Alliance's elite combat units. As they entered the zone, the environment shifted around them. Holographic projectors created a battlefield scattered with debris and obstacles. The artificial gravity generators would randomly alter gravitational forces during the test, simulating real space combat conditions. "Warriors," a disembodied voice announced, "your objective is to neutralize 20 targets while dealing with varying environmental conditions. Energy shields are active. Scoring is based on accuracy, time, and tactical decisions." Jack took his position, noting how the other candidates spread out far from him. None of them wanted to be associated with the primitive human and his projectile weapon. He allowed himself a small smile. The first targets appeared, holographic drones programmed to move and react like real enemies. The air filled with the distinctive whine of plasma weapons as the alien warriors opened fire. Their energy bolts streaked through the air, impressive and bright. Jack waited. The other warriors were scoring hits, but they were using excessive energy, their weapons' signatures lighting up the battlefield like a cosmic light show. He remembered his first instructor's words: "A sniper's greatest weapons are patience and invisibility." A target moved behind a piece of debris, partially exposed. The others ignored it, focusing on easier marks. Jack's rifle cracked once, the sound stark and harsh among the energy weapon discharge. The target dropped, a perfect hit through what would have been its command center. "Primitive projectile weapons have no place in modern combat," one of the insectoid warriors chittered loudly. "They are slow, visible, and limited by physical ammunition." Jack didn't respond. His second shot dropped another target that had been hiding behind an energy shield. The shield, calibrated to stop energy weapons, had no effect on the kinetic force of his bullet. The artificial gravity shifted suddenly, sending several warriors floating upward. They struggled to reorient themselves, their energy weapons spraying plasma bolts wildly. Jack had already anchored himself, his rifle's recoil compensator adjusting automatically to the new conditions. 3 more targets fell to his careful shots. Each pull of the trigger was calculated, each bullet finding its mark with deadly precision. He didn't waste ammunition on suppressing fire or area effects like the others. Commander Brightsong's voice carried across the training zone. Look at the human, still fighting like his ancestors did centuries ago. How did such a species ever achieve spaceflight? The mockery continued throughout the test, but Jack remained focused. His childhood on Earth's rugged frontier had taught him to tune out distractions. He'd spent countless hours in wilderness areas where one shot meant the difference between eating and going hungry. As the final minutes approached, Jack had taken down 18 targets with 18 shots. The other warriors had scored similar numbers of kills, but their energy weapons had depleted significantly more power. In a real combat situation, they would need to recharge soon. The final 2 targets appeared simultaneously, moving erratically through the shifting gravity fields. The alien warriors opened fire, their energy weapons creating a dazzling display but missing repeatedly. The targets' advanced shields deflected most of their shots. Jack took a breath, let it out slowly, and squeezed the trigger twice in rapid succession. Both targets dropped, clean hits through their weak points. The training zone fell silent. Exercise complete, the automated system announced. Final scores. Candidate Thompson, 20 targets, 20 shots, 0 misses, minimal energy signature. Efficiency rating, superior. The alien warriors stared at him, their various expressions unreadable to human eyes. Commander Brightsong approached, his silver scales slightly dulled with what might have been embarrassment. Your weapon, the commander said slowly. How did it penetrate the shields? It didn't have to, Jack replied, starting to break down his rifle for cleaning. Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons. Kinetic projectiles pass right through, assuming they're moving fast enough, and hit at the right angle. Sometimes the old ways still work best. The commander made a sound Jack couldn't interpret. Perhaps there are things we could learn from Earth's combat doctrine. Your methods are unusual, but I cannot argue with the results. Jack nodded politely. But he knew this was just the beginning. One successful training exercise wouldn't change centuries of ingrained beliefs about superior technology. The aliens still saw humans as primitives playing with outdated weapons. As he packed up his gear, Jack thought about the reports he'd been reading. Strange signals from the outer rim of Alliance space, unusual ship movements, and disturbing rumors of a new threat emerging from the void. Something told him that humanity's primitive skills might soon prove more valuable than anyone expected. The other warriors filed out, their conversations a mix of languages all discussing the surprising performance of the human with his ancient weapon. Jack was the last to leave the training zone, his rifle case secure under his arm. He'd learned long ago that being underestimated could be an advantage. Tomorrow would bring more trials, more mockery, and more opportunities to prove that humanity's place in the galaxy was well earned. For now, he had a weapon to clean and performance data to review. The stars were waiting, and Jack Thompson had a feeling they would soon need every skill humanity had preserved, no matter how primitive those skills might seem. 3 months after the qualification trials, Jack Thompson stood in the Alliance Command Center, watching the massive holographic display with growing concern. Red warning markers dotted the outer territories, each representing another lost outpost. The room buzzed with nervous energy as aliens of various species hurried back and forth, their usual arrogance replaced by barely hidden fear. Commander Brightsong's scales had dulled to an anxious gray as he gestured at the latest battle footage. The Void Swarm adapts too quickly. Our weapons. The proud Brightclaw warrior paused, mandibles clicking in frustration. Our weapons become less effective with each encounter. The footage showed Alliance ships firing their advanced energy weapons at dark, organic-looking vessels. The first shots penetrated, causing damage. But within minutes, the enemy ships developed shields that absorbed or reflected the energy attacks. It was like watching an immune system learn to fight off a disease. "How many colonies have we lost?" asked Admiral Green, Earth's representative on the Alliance Council. She was new to her position, but had already earned respect for her direct approach to problems. A gelatinous being pulsed with dark colors as it answered. 7 in the past month. The Void Swarm ships appear to be partially organic, partially mechanical. They learn from each engagement. Traditional energy weapons become useless after brief exposure. Jack studied the footage carefully, noting how the enemy ships moved and adapted. His sniper's eye caught details others might miss: patterns in the shield modifications, weak points in the organic armor that appeared briefly during adaptation phases. "What about physical weapons?" he asked. "Projectiles, missiles, kinetic strikes." Several alien council members made their species equivalent of dismissive gestures. An insectoid warrior clicked its mandibles rapidly. Primitive weapons would be even less effective. The Void Swarm's shields can stop anything once they adapt. "Anything they detect," Jack corrected quietly. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. "Look at the footage again. Their shields adapt to energy signatures they can track. But what if they can't see what's coming?" Admiral Green leaned forward. "Explain, Master Sergeant." Jack stepped up to the holographic display and pointed to a specific section of a Void Swarm ship. "Their detection systems are based on energy readings. That's why they adapt so quickly to our plasma weapons and laser arrays. But a properly designed kinetic projectile wouldn't give off any energy signature. It would be invisible to their systems." Commander Brightsong's scales flickered with interest. "Like your rifle in the training exercise. The target shields were calibrated for energy weapons, not physical projectiles." "Exactly," Jack nodded. "But this would need to be on a much larger scale. We'd need special ammunition that could survive the journey through space, maintain accuracy over extreme distances, and deliver enough force to penetrate their organic armor." The council chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Many dismissed the idea immediately, calling it a desperate resort to obsolete warfare. Others, especially those who had seen their colonies fall to the Void Swarm, were willing to consider any option. Admiral Green raised her hand for silence. "The Void Swarm is approaching the Turner colony. They'll be there in less than 2 weeks. I suggest we test Master Sergeant Thompson's theory before they arrive. We have nothing to lose." "Nothing except time and resources that could be spent on real solutions," one council member objected. Their crystalline forms sparkled with patterns that indicated skepticism. Jack kept his voice level as he replied. "The Alliance has lost 7 colonies using real solutions. Maybe it's time to try something different." To everyone's surprise, Commander Brightsong stepped forward. "I support this plan. I have learned that sometimes older methods have merit. The human proved this in training." The vote was close, but in the end, desperation won over pride. Jack received authorization to assemble a small team and modify their equipment for space combat. He immediately sent for Lieutenant Maria Ross and Captain David Miller, Earth's top combat specialists. As the council chamber emptied, Commander Brightsong approached Jack. "The Turner colony is home to thousands of my people," the alien warrior said quietly. "Their lives now depend on your primitive weapons." Jack met the commander's compound eyes. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We'll need your help to coordinate with the fleet." The next 10 days passed in a blur of preparation. Jack and his team worked with Alliance engineers to modify their rifles for space combat. They designed special ammunition that could maintain stability in vacuum and penetrate organic armor. Each round had to be perfectly crafted. There would be no second chances in the coming battle. Maria Ross spent hours running calculations for long-range shots in space, accounting for variables that planetary snipers never had to consider. David Miller worked with Alliance tacticians to develop deployment strategies that would keep the human snipers hidden from the Void Swarm's detection systems. Jack found himself in the ship's training room late one night, making minute adjustments to his rifle's scope. A group of alien warriors watched from the doorway, their earlier mockery replaced by uncertain curiosity. Will it really work? One of them asked. Can these simple weapons succeed where our technology has failed? Jack lined up a practice shot before answering. There's nothing simple about what we're going to do. Hitting a target in space, at extreme range, with no energy signature to track. That's one of the hardest shots possible. But sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced one. The practice target, moving to simulate a Void Swarm ship, shattered as Jack's shot found its mark. The alien warriors whispered among themselves, their doubts slowly giving way to something that might have been hope. Admiral Green's voice came over the ship's comm system. All hands, prepare for jump to Turner Colony. Enemy contact expected in 48 hours. Jack packed up his rifle, each movement precise and practiced. The weight of the weapon was comforting, a solid link to centuries of human martial tradition. The aliens had laughed at these traditions, but now they were betting lives on them. As he headed to his quarters, Jack passed the ship's observation deck. The view screen showed the swirling colors of jump space, beautiful and terrifying. Somewhere out there, the Void Swarm was approaching, confident in their superior adaptation abilities. They had never faced an enemy who could strike without being detected. The human sniper smiled slightly. Sometimes the best advantage was being underestimated. The aliens had laughed at Earth's primitive weapons, but soon they would learn what those weapons could do in the right hands. The coming battle would prove that humanity's place in the Alliance was well earned. In his quarters, Jack reviewed the mission plans one last time. Everything would have to be perfect. The positioning, the timing, the shots themselves. One small error could mean the loss of another colony. But he had faith in his team and in the skills that humanity had preserved through centuries of advancement. The ship's artificial gravity flickered slightly as they traveled through jump space. In less than 2 days, they would face an enemy that had defeated the Alliance's most advanced technology. And they would face it with what the aliens called primitive weapons, guided by skills as old as warfare itself. Jack Thompson closed his eyes and began his pre-mission meditation. Just as generations of snipers had done before him, the fate of the Turner Colony would depend on whether humanity's old ways could triumph over the galaxy's new threats. The Turner Colony hung in space like a jewel, its protective domes gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. Jack Thompson watched it through the ship's observation window, his modified rifle secured across his back. In 12 hours, the Void Swarm would arrive, and everything would depend on shots that most of the galaxy considered impossible. Final equipment check, Maria Ross announced, her voice steady as she moved through the preparation room. Her own rifle was already adjusted for the vacuum of space, its scope modified to account for the extreme distances they would face. David Miller looked up from his calculations. The targeting computers are ready. I've programmed them with every variable we could think of. Gravitational effects, stellar winds, even radiation pressure. He paused, frowning at his datapad. But at these ranges, it's still going to come down to human judgment. Jack nodded, checking his suit's cooling systems one final time. The special armor would hide their heat signatures, making them virtually invisible to the Void Swarm's detection systems, but it would also make them blind to each other once in position. Commander Brightsong entered the room, his scales now a determined silver gray. The fleet is in position. We've hidden the main battle group behind the colony's largest moon. The Void Swarm will think they face only a token defense force. Any word on their numbers? Jack asked, starting his own equipment check. Our long-range scouts report 3 high ships and at least 20 smaller vessels. The commander's mandibles clicked anxiously. More than we expected. Are you certain your team can do this? Before Jack could answer, the ship's AI announced, Alert! Void Swarm vessels detected emerging from jump space. Time to contact, 10 hours, 47 minutes. "They're early," Maria said, quickly finishing her preparations. "We need to get in position now." The next hour was a blur of focused activity. 3 small stealth shuttles, their engines modified to run cold, carried the human snipers to their positions on different asteroids. The chunks of space rock had been carefully chosen to give clear firing lines while providing cover. Jack's shuttle touched down softly on his designated asteroid. The pilot, a nervous young alien whose species name Jack couldn't pronounce, whispered "good hunting" before departing. The sound of the shuttle's engines faded, leaving Jack alone in the void. He activated his suit's magnetic boots and moved carefully to his prepared position. The asteroid's surface was rough, providing natural supports for his rifle. He lay down, the cooling systems in his suit already working to mask his presence. "All units, radio silence from this point forward." David's voice came through the comm system. "Use emergency channels only. Good luck." Jack settled into position, his breathing slow and controlled. Through his scope, he could see the Turner colony clearly. The asteroid's slow rotation had been calculated into his firing solutions. Now all they could do was wait. Hours passed. Jack remained perfectly still, conserving his suit's power. His training had prepared him for long periods of inactivity, but this was different. One wrong move, one equipment failure, and the enemy would detect them. The Void Swarm arrived exactly as predicted. Their ships looked even more horrifying up close. Massive organic mechanical hybrids that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The 3 high ships moved into position around the colony, while smaller vessels began systematic attack patterns. The Alliance's token defense force engaged them, their energy weapons blazing. As expected, the first volleys caused damage to the Void Swarm vessels. But within minutes, their shields adapted, rendering the attacks useless. Through his scope, Jack watched the battle unfold. He could see the point where each enemy ship's organic components merged with their mechanical parts. That junction would be their weakness, if he could hit it at exactly the right angle. The main Alliance fleet emerged from behind the moon, launching a massive attack. The Void Swarm responded predictably, their ships turning to face the new threat. Their attention was focused on the energy weapons they could detect, not on the silent human snipers waiting in the darkness. Jack's earpiece crackled. "Target Alpha is in position," David's voice whispered. "Firing solutions uploaded. We have one chance at this." The largest high ship moved exactly where they wanted it, turning its flank to Jack's position as it engaged the Alliance fleet. Its shields glowed with absorbed energy, but they were calibrated for the wrong type of attack. Jack exhaled slowly, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. The shot would need to travel 15 kilometers through space, accounting for the target's movement, gravitational effects, and countless other variables. At this range, the round would take several seconds to reach its target. The Alliance fleet's attack intensified, keeping the high ship's attention focused away from the asteroids. Jack could see smaller Void Swarm vessels being destroyed, their shields failing under concentrated fire. But the high ships remained untouched, their adaptive defenses growing stronger with each attack. A light on Jack's helmet display turned green, the signal that all 3 snipers were ready. They would fire simultaneously, targeting different critical points on the main high ship. If even one shot missed, the enemy would detect them and adapt. Jack's world narrowed to his scope, the target, and his breathing. He thought of all the aliens who had laughed at human weapons, who had called them primitive and obsolete. He thought of the colonies already lost to the Void Swarm, and of the thousands of lives depending on this shot. "On my mark," David's voice was barely a whisper. 3, 2, 1. Jack squeezed the trigger. The rifle's recoil compensators worked perfectly, absorbing the force that would have sent him floating off the asteroid. Through his scope, he watched the specially designed round streak through space, completely invisible to the Void Swarm's detection systems. For 3 eternal seconds, nothing happened. The battle continued to rage, energy weapons flashing against adapted shields. The high ship continued its attack on the Alliance fleet, unaware of the 3 kinetic rounds approaching from different angles. Then, almost simultaneously, 3 spots on the high ship's hull erupted in sprays of organic matter and mechanical debris. The rounds had struck their targets perfectly, bypassing the energy shields and striking the crucial junctions between organic and mechanical components. The massive ship shuddered, its coordinated attack faltering. Secondary explosions began to chain through its structure as critical systems failed. The smaller Void Swarm vessels nearby began to move erratically, their controlled movements degrading into chaos. Direct hits confirmed. Maria's voice was tense with excitement. The high ship's neural network is shutting down. Their coordination is breaking apart. The Alliance fleet seized the advantage, concentrating their fire on the now vulnerable smaller ships. Without the high ship's coordination, their adaptive shields were slower to respond, less effective. Jack allowed himself a small smile as he began calculating his next shot. The battle wasn't over. 2 high ships remained, and they would be more cautious now. But the Alliance had hope, and the Void Swarm had just learned that not all weapons could be detected and adapted to. Sometimes, the old ways were still the best ways. The remains of the first high ship drifted through space, its once fearsome bulk now just another piece of debris in the battlefield. But Jack Thompson had no time to admire their handiwork. The 2 remaining high ships had changed their tactics, keeping their vulnerable spots better protected and moving in unpredictable patterns. They're learning. David Miller's voice crackled through the comm. The second high ship is staying behind a screen of smaller vessels. No clear shot at the critical junction points. Jack watched through his scope as the battle evolved. The Alliance fleet was pressing their advantage against the disorganized smaller ships, but they couldn't get close to the remaining high ships. Energy weapons flashed uselessly against adapted shields. We need to move, Jack decided. They'll figure out where those shots came from soon enough. He carefully began to pack up his rifle, every movement slow and deliberate to avoid detection. Maria's voice came through, tense but controlled. My position is already compromised. Picking up scan patterns near my asteroid. Moving to backup position beta. The survival suits were working perfectly, masking their heat signatures, but the Void Swarm wasn't stupid. They would eventually trace the trajectory of the shots that had destroyed their first high ship. Jack activated his suit's maneuvering thrusters, using the absolute minimum power needed to push off from the asteroid. He had trained for this in simulations, but doing it for real, surrounded by the silence of space and the distant flashes of battle, was completely different. Commander Brightsong's voice broke through on the emergency channel. Human snipers, be advised. Our sensors detect the high ships are releasing some kind of organic probe. They appear to be searching for non-energy signatures. They're looking for mass concentrations, David explained, trying to find us by our physical presence since they can't detect our energy outputs. Smart. Jack floated through space, using occasional bursts from his thrusters to guide his path toward a new position. Through his helmet's display, he could see the battle continuing to rage. The Alliance fleet was fighting well, but without another successful sniper strike, they couldn't hurt the remaining high ships. A flash of movement caught his eye. Something organic and serpentine weaving through the debris field. One of the Void Swarm's probes. Jack remained perfectly still, letting his momentum carry him forward. The probe passed within meters of his position, its sensory organs searching for any unusual mass concentrations. New firing solutions uploaded, David announced quietly. The second high ship will pass through Sector 7 in approximately 12 minutes. Their current formation leaves a 2-second window where their junction points will be exposed. Jack checked his oxygen levels as he drifted toward his new position. We'll only get one more chance at this. They'll adapt their tactics completely after another successful shot. If we miss, they'll find us, Maria added. These probes are getting too close for comfort. The next 10 minutes were among the tensest of Jack's life. He had to reach his new position, set up his rifle, and prepare for the shot, all while avoiding the increasing number of organic probes sweeping through space. One brush against those things would give away their presence instantly. He finally settled into position behind a large piece of debris, possibly part of an Alliance ship destroyed earlier in the battle. His cooling suit was working overtime to maintain his invisibility, but its power wouldn't last forever. 5 minutes to firing window. David updated them. Maria, are you in position? Affirmative. But I've got 3 probes circling my area. This is going to be close. Jack calibrated his scope, accounting for his new position. The second high ship was moving exactly as David had predicted, its massive bulk turning to coordinate attacks on the Alliance fleet. Soon, its vulnerable spots would be exposed for a crucial 2 seconds. Admiral Green reporting. A new voice joined their channel. The fleet can't hold this position much longer. Their adaptive shields are getting stronger with each engagement. It's now or never. Through his scope, Jack could see the truth of her words. Alliance ships were taking heavy damage, their energy weapons becoming less and less effective as the Void Swarm adapted. The smaller enemy ships might be in disarray, but the high ships were as dangerous as ever. 2 minutes, David announced. The probes are starting to create a search pattern. They'll have this whole sector covered soon. Jack focused on his breathing, pushing away all distractions. The shot would be even harder than the first one. The target was moving faster, and now they knew their weak points could be hit. The margin for error was 0. 1 minute. Maria, can you get clear for the shot? Negative. Her voice was frustrated. Probes are too close. If I move now, they'll detect me. Jack's mind raced. They needed 3 simultaneous hits to take down a high ship. With Maria blocked, their chances dropped dramatically. 30 seconds. David's voice was tight. Jack, are you clear? Affirmative. But without Maria's shot. I'll take her target. David cut in. I've moved to a position where I can hit 2 junction points with rapid shots. It won't be simultaneous, but it's our only chance. It was a near impossible feat, hitting 2 moving targets within a split second of each other, at extreme range, with no room for error. But they had no choice. 10 seconds. David's voice was eerily calm now. On my mark. Jack settled into his shooting position, every muscle relaxed, his mind clear. Through his scope, he could see the high ship beginning its turn. The organic probes were getting closer, their search pattern tightening. 3, 2, 1, mark. Jack squeezed the trigger at exactly the same moment David fired his first shot. 2 rounds streaked through space, invisible to the Void Swarm's detection systems. A split second later, David's second shot followed. Time seemed to slow as Jack watched through his scope. The first 2 rounds struck almost simultaneously, tearing into the high ship's vulnerable spots. The third round, David's incredible second shot, hit its target a fraction of a second later. The effect wasn't as catastrophic as with the first high ship, but it was enough. The massive vessel's coordinated movements broke down, its attacks becoming erratic. Secondary explosions began to chain through its structure. But they had no time to celebrate. The organic probes suddenly changed direction, converging on their positions. The multiple shots had given away their locations. Move. Now. Jack ordered, already pushing away from his position. A probe swept through the space he had occupied seconds later. The last high ship is changing pattern, Commander Brightsong reported. It's pulling back, gathering all remaining forces around it. They're adapting their entire strategy. Jack triggered his thrusters, pushing himself toward a new hiding spot. The remaining high ship would be nearly impossible to hit now. They had lost the element of surprise, and the Void Swarm would protect their vulnerabilities at all costs. As he maneuvered through space, watching the probes searching for him and his team, Jack knew they needed a new plan. The old approach wouldn't work again, but maybe that was the point. The best snipers knew how to adapt too. He opened his comm channel. David, Maria, rendezvous at emergency point Charlie. I have an idea. Emergency Point Charlie was a small maintenance bay on the outer edge of Turner Colony. Jack arrived last, having taken a longer route to avoid the searching probes. Maria and David were already there, their rifles stowed and their cooling suits running on backup power. "We've got maybe 2 hours of invisibility left," Maria reported, checking her suit's readings. "After that, the cooling systems fail, and we light up like beacons to their sensors." David nodded toward the battle visible through the bay's reinforced window. "The last high ship has gathered every surviving vessel around it. No clear shots, no exposed weak points. They're learning fast." Jack began unloading his equipment. "They're learning, but so are we. Look at how they're moving. Everything orbits around the high ship now. They're not just protecting it. They're depending on it even more than before." "Makes sense," Maria said. "With 2 high ships down, all their coordination has to run through the last one. It's their command center, their brain." "And their weakness," Jack added. He pulled up a holographic display of the battlefield. "Commander Brightsong, are you receiving?" The Brightclaw commander's voice crackled through their comms. "Affirmative. The fleet is holding position, but we cannot maintain this standoff much longer. Their adaptive shields are becoming nearly perfect against our energy weapons. We need a different approach," Jack said, manipulating the hologram. "The Void Swarm thinks they know our capabilities now. They're expecting long-range shots from hidden positions, so we'll do something they won't expect. We'll get close." David stared at him. "Close? Those organic probes will detect us the moment we leave cover. Not if we're not trying to hide." Jack zoomed in on the high ship's defensive formation. "Look at all the debris from the battle. Pieces of ships, both Alliance and Void Swarm, floating everywhere. Perfect cover for a different kind of approach." Maria caught on first. "We use maneuvering thrusters to look like debris. They'll be looking for hidden snipers, not broken ship parts drifting through the battlefield." "Exactly." Jack highlighted 3 approach vectors on the hologram. "We'll need the fleet's help. Commander, can your ships create a debris field that matches these trajectories?" "By destroying more of our own ships." The commander's tone was skeptical. "The Council will not approve." Admiral Green's voice joined the channel. "The Council just lost 2 colony worlds while we were fighting here. They'll approve anything that works. What's the full plan, Master Sergeant?" Jack outlined his strategy quickly. The Alliance fleet would engage in a seeming last-ditch attack, deliberately losing some smaller ships to create fresh debris. Hidden among the wreckage, 3 cooling-suited snipers would drift toward the high ship, carried by the momentum of the explosions. "They'll see us when we take the shots," David warned. "At that range, we'll never get away in time." "We're not supposed to get away," Jack said quietly. "This is a one-way mission. But if we take out that last high ship, the entire Void Swarm loses its coordination. The Alliance fleet can handle the rest." Silence filled the maintenance bay. They all understood what he was saying. At point-blank range, their shots would definitely destroy the hive ship, but the explosion would catch them too. There would be no escape. Commander Brightsong spoke first. "My people once called your weapons primitive. I was wrong. This plan, it has honor. The Alliance fleet will give you the cover you need." The next hour was a blur of preparation. They modified their suits' thrusters to emit debris-like movement patterns. Each sniper checked and rechecked their weapons, knowing their final shots would need to be perfect despite the chaos around them. The Alliance fleet began its attack run, ships deliberately exposing themselves to enemy fire. The explosions sent debris spinning in carefully calculated directions. Among the chunks of metal and machinery, 3 human shapes drifted, their movements matching the random tumble of wreckage. Jack watched the battlefield spin past as his suit's thrusters occasionally fired, maintaining his course. The high ship grew larger in his vision, its organic mechanical bulk surrounded by a swarm of protective vessels. The organic probes swept past several times, but they were programmed to ignore debris. 5 minutes to optimal range, David whispered over the comm. They still haven't spotted us. The Alliance fleet pulled back, as if defeated. The Void Swarm ships pressed their advantage, moving forward in perfect coordination. Jack could see the point where the Hive ship's organic and mechanical components joined. Their target. 3 minutes, Maria reported. Power failing in my cooling suit. They'll detect us soon. Doesn't matter now, Jack replied. We're close enough. The shots will hit before they can react. The next 2 minutes passed in tense silence as they drifted closer. Jack could see individual details on the Hive ship's hull now, the living metal pulsing with alien energy. Their trajectory would take them almost directly alongside it. All shooters, prepare to fire on my mark, Jack said quietly. David, left junction point. Maria, right. I'll take the central node. Fire as one then. He paused. It's been an honor. Honor's all ours, boss, David replied. Maria's acknowledgement was a simple click on the comm. The Hive ship filled their scopes now. At this range, even their primitive projectile weapons would tear through its hull like paper. One shot each, perfectly placed, would end the Void Swarm's threat to this sector of space. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3 rifles fired as one. At point-blank range, there was no time for the Void Swarm to react. 3 rounds hit their targets simultaneously, tearing into the vital junction points of the massive ship. The explosion started from within, the Hive ship's organic components rupturing as its mechanical systems overloaded. Jack caught a glimpse of the smaller ships starting to move erratically, their coordination already failing. Then the shockwave hit. His last thought was that the aliens would never laugh at Earth's snipers again. Hours later, Commander Brightsong stood before the Alliance Council, his scales shimmering with pride and sorrow. The Void Swarm threat in this sector has been eliminated. Their ships, without the Hive Mind's coordination, were easily defeated. The Turner colony is safe. And the human snipers? One council member asked. They gave their lives to save thousands, the commander replied. Their primitive weapons and ancient skills accomplish what our advanced technology could not. I move that we create a special division within the Alliance military, the Thompson Corps. We will train both humans and aliens in the arts of precision warfare, combining old techniques with new technology. The council's vote was unanimous. As the commander left the chamber, he heard 2 younger warriors talking about training to become snipers themselves. They spoke of human weapons with respect, even awe. In the debris field near Turner Colony, 3 rifles floated among the wreckage, their scopes still focused on the point where the last Hive ship had been. They would later be recovered and placed in the Alliance Military Museum, a reminder that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways. And in training grounds across Alliance space, a new generation of warriors began to learn the patient art of the sniper, guided by instructors who no longer laughed at primitive weapons. They learned to wait in perfect stillness, to calculate impossible shots, and to remember the 3 humans who had turned the tide of war with skills as old as combat itself.